August 8th, 2011 meeting of East Penn School District Board of School Directors is hereby called to order. Please rise and join me in saluting the flag. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, I have two requests to address the board this evening. Mr. John Donchez of Emmaus, speaking about webcasting.
Hello everyone, and thanks for the time to address you. This is for the board and the administration. I have, throughout the school year during the board meetings, I've asked if East Penn School District is going to broadcast their public school board meetings over their website. This has been met with reluctance because of the cost matters. Dollar amount always mentioned is $8,000. And I'm not sure where that basis for this cost came from, but I was wondering, was there a study done by the school district directly related to this? And if there is, if I could see it, just to see how that was brought about. Anyway, I think this is an important service the East Penn School District should provide the East Penn School District taxpayer so that they could see the meetings as they happen and at their pleasure or opportunity best suited to them. And for this purpose, Dr. Seidenberger, I'm trying to see if it's possible that we can work together to provide this service to the public at the best cost for all. A few months ago, I presented a DVD of one of the school board meetings that I recorded to Mr. Mohn, Director of Technology. I asked if he could tell me if the format of that DVD would work with East Penn School District's website. I said that I have no problems providing the disc to the East Penn School District gratis so that you could put it up on your site and have people see this. I haven't gotten a response to my question. I hope that we will work together to see that this public service comes to fruition soon. I'd be willing to meet with Mr. Mohn at his earliest availability before the next East Penn School District Board meeting to go over the necessary parameters to accomplish this. Thanks for your time in addressing this important public service.
Thank you, Mr. Donchez. The second request to address the board is Mr. Travis Flexer, speaking about the lack of service from daycare providers to Alberta Elementary.
Thank you for your time this evening. Apologize, this is not my forte, but my son is about to start grade school at Alberta Elementary, and my wife and I, like other families in the district, do need pre and post care service with daycare for my son. And it's come to my attention he does not have any opportunities for busing between his daycare provider and Alberta Elementary. Apparently this is the only elementary school within the district that is not providing any transportation, district-sponsored transportation between the school and a daycare provider. So I just asked the board to review their policy. I'm just looking for fairness, and I know that every other elementary school receives this service, and I'm just looking for a resolution to a problem that not only my wife and I face, but other students at Alberta Elementary. Thank you for the review.
Thank you, Mr. Flexen. No other requests to address the board that I know of. We will proceed on to approval of minutes. Can I have a motion, please? Second. Is there any discussion of the minutes? None appearing. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed to approving the minutes? The motion carries. We'll now go on to the report of the Superintendent of Schools, Dr. Thomas Seidenberger.
Thank you, Mr. Ballard, and we have a lot to report tonight. We'll try to be as succinct as possible, but there's a lot of good news that we want to share with you. First of all, I want to review some basic good news regarding the class of 2011 from Emmaus High School. Our students received $68,375 in local scholarship money. In addition, it's our estimate that some of our graduates received over $5 million this year in academic scholarships, and another group of student athletes received $600,000 in athletic scholarships. So I think our students performed quite well from Emmaus High School. In addition, we did receive our high school AP scores recently, and just to review with you, we offer 22 AP courses at Emmaus High School. That's a lot. That's a very competitive number when you compare us to other high schools in the region. Students taking those classes, there were 421 separate exams taken. Of those 421 exams, 96 scored at least a 3. 140 scored at least a 4, and there were 144 exams that scored a perfect 5. So again, I think our high school students distinguished themselves, and I certainly want to commend the students and their teachers for an outstanding performance in AP scores. And again, at some point when Mrs. Diagmore does her high school presentation, maybe we can highlight the AP courses again, because it's a nice list. Now, things are going on, as you know, in Washington, throughout the country, and in Harrisburg that are going to affect what we're doing here. So I've asked Mrs. Diagmore, Mrs. Nowak, and they have some other teacher guests with us tonight, to give you an overview of what we think is going to be the number one outside influence on what we're going to be doing in math instruction. And so I'm going to ask Dr. Diagmore and Mrs. Nowak to give the board a briefing regarding the new Common Core math standards. And we have 2 teacher guests with us who are, we're blessed to have them serve on statewide committees. And they'll be introduced later on.
Good evening. Mrs. Nowak and our Common Core team are here this evening to give you a brief overview of what the Common Core standards are, and to also share with you a slight sequencing change in math that will occur at the middle level. And as you may know, Pennsylvania is one of 45 states that have now adopted the Common Core standards. Our state formally adopted the Common Core July 2nd of 2010, and then our state Department of Education mandated that all districts statewide implement these Common Core standards by 2013. The Standards Initiative is a state-led initiative that was coordinated by the National Governors Association Center for Best Practices and also the Council of Chief State School Officers. And they were developed in collaboration with teachers and school administrators and experts to provide a clear and consistent framework to prepare our children to be college and career ready. The standards are informed by the highest, most effective models from states across the country and also countries around the world, and they provide teachers and parents with a common understanding of what students are expected to learn regardless of where they live. The standards were designed to be robust and relevant to the real world, reflecting the knowledge and the skills that our young people need for success in colleges and careers, preparing them for the future, and to successfully compete in the global economy. They are built upon the strengths and the lessons of the current state standards, and they are evidence-based. There are 2 Common Core strands, and the first one is reflected in this slide. It is the language arts strand. It integrates the reading, writing, speaking, listening, and language into social studies and into science. And when the state committees compared the Pennsylvania standards against the Common Core standards, they noted that the state of Pennsylvania was 95% aligned to the Common Core. This is the good news. The next slide, however, shares that the second strand is that of mathematics. And as you can see, math is divided into 2 sections. One is practice and one is content. When the state reviewed the PA standards against the Common Core standards, they noted that at this time we were only 45% aligned at the state level. What does this translate to? This translates to intense work at the state level and also at all district levels over the next 2 years to prepare our students fully for the full integration and implementation of the Common Core standards. That's where our work is. The next slide goes into detail more on the Common Core organization and the standards for mathematical practice. The practice focuses on the core conceptual understandings and procedures that start in the early grades. This enables teachers to take the time needed to teach the core concepts and the procedures well, and give students the opportunity to master them. In fact, in grades K through 5, they gain a solid foundation in the whole numbers, addition, subtraction, multiplication, division, fractions, and decimals. And then when they reach the middle level, the students build on the foundation that they've had from K-5 through hands-on learning in geometry, algebra, probability, and statistics. Then at the high school level, the standards call on the students to practice applying mathematical ways of thinking to real-world issues and challenges, and they also emphasize mathematical modeling. We will actually begin implementing all of these standards of practice across all grade levels, K-12, beginning this year. This next slide talks about the standards for content, and those are presented by grade level for grades K through 8. They're organized into domains, and they're introduced by 2 to 4 focal points. And then at the high school, they're presented by conceptual themes. And just a side note before we move to the next slide, that in addition to transitioning to the Common Core, I'm sure you've all heard of the end-of-course Keystone exams that are currently on hiatus at our state level. They are slated to be fully operational again in 2012-13. So we are working with our teaching staff to provide a proactive transition for our curriculum and the instructional programs here to address these new expectations. This first change will be addressed with the middle level math. And Dr. Seinberger has a letter that reflects these changes that he will be sending to all grade 7 parents and students, and I believe you have a copy of that letter. Mrs. Nowak and I will also be hosting follow-up parent sessions with the rest of our Common Core transition team. We'll do this in the fall to help answer any questions that parents may have as we work through this 2-year transition. Now at this time I'd like to introduce Mrs. Stacy Mackis, who is not only our middle school math department leader, but she was also selected from hundreds of applicants statewide to actually serve on the state level Common Core transition team. So we are very privileged to have her with us. And then after she speaks about the middle level programming, Mrs. Laura Leiby, who is our math department leader at the high school, will also address what's happening at the high school level. And I'd like you to also note that among many applicants at the state level, she was selected to serve on the Keystone exam team at the state level. So I feel we have wonderful representation for our district with the state so that we are being proactive in doing what our students need over the next 2 years to be completely ready. So at this time, I'd like to introduce Mrs. Stacy Mackis.
Good evening. One of the great things about working in East Penn School District is that we're proactive. We look forward in order to adequately prepare our students with what changes are happening at the state level. So this coming school year, our math department has already started meeting. We had our first meeting last week, and the grade 7 students for our next school year all will be taking pre-algebra, and they will be heterogeneously grouped. So our math department has already looked at the pre-algebra curriculum to make sure that all students in 7th grade will have a good curriculum for them that's already looking at the Common Core standards. Pre-algebra A in our 7th grade will no longer be offered. Algebra 1 honors, however, will still be offered for our accelerated students. As we look at grade 8, we started looking at pre-algebra B and how we can start incorporating the algebraic concepts that are part of the Common Core into the upcoming school year. And that is one thing that will definitely help our 9th grade students prepare for the Keystone exam that they will be taking the following school year. We'll continue working on employee development. What's great about our middle school math department is that every math department teacher signs up for those ED classes, and we have another session scheduled for next week, and we will finish up working and getting ready for the upcoming school year. Then for our following school year, we're going to start taking a look at the Algebra 1 content, and that content is going to be spread over 2 years in grade 8 and grade 9. We're proposing that pre-Algebra B in 8th grade has a name change to Algebra 1A, and the students in that class would not take the Keystone exam until after they finish grade 9 math. Algebra 1 honors will still be offered to our grade 8 students, and it will be offered as an honors level course, and those students in grade 8 will take the Keystone exam. And as we start looking forward to that school year, we're going to plan some more summer ED to make sure that we adequately prepare our teachers for those changes in our curriculum. So next I'd like to introduce Ms. Laura Leiby, and she'll be talking about high school math.
One of the nice pieces for our professional development program is that we do have a very nice collaborative relationship between the middle level teachers and the high school level teachers. So that at this point, with the transition into the Common Core and Keystone exams, part of what we're doing this year in our summertime is looking at the Common Core and doing professional development with both levels present. We're also looking specifically at the discussions for preparing our students for the Algebra 1, Algebra 2, and Geometry Keystone exams. Even though those exams are on hiatus for the current year, we need to be cognizant of the upcoming expectations for our students to make sure that they are ready in the coming years. For 2012 to 2013, at the high school, we're going to be making a couple of changes as well. The current students who would be taking the Algebra 1A in 8th grade will be taking 1B in 9th grade. If a student would fail grade 8 Algebra 1A, they will have the opportunity to repeat Algebra 1A as 9th grade students. Students who pass Algebra 1A will be taking 1B in 9th grade, and those students will be prepared to take the Keystone exam during the 2012-2013 school year. One other change that would take place at the high school is that the Algebra Seminar course, which is currently a double period, full year Algebra 1 course, is going to be transitioned into an Algebra 1A course that will also have a lab component, which will be provided for students who need additional support, or special education students, and some of our other struggling learners. At this point, that concludes our presentation from our team. If you need more information, there are the 3 websites that are listed in your PowerPoint handout. Thank you for your time and attention. Are there any questions? Yes, Mr. Earnshaw.
Well, please address the chair.
Oh,
Okay. Mr. Earnshaw, would you like to ask your question?
Thank you, Mr. Ballard. The question I had was about students who took Algebra 1 in the 8th grade. So for the 2012-13 school year, we're going to be administering the Keystone exams. Is there going to be an exemption for those who took algebra previously, or are they going to have to come back and take that Keystone exam after the fact? They didn't study that particular class in high school.
You're saying in the coming school year?
No, in 2012-13. So let's say, for the sake of illustration, that a student going into the 8th grade this fall takes Algebra 1 in the 8th grade, passes it, and goes on to Geometry 1 as a freshman in high school. Are they going to have to go back and take the Keystone exam for that algebra class that they took prior to high school? Or how will that work with the state?
The state only expects students to take the exam in the year that they've taken that exam, or that course. So for students who have taken the course previously, they're exempt.
Great, thank you.
Are there other questions for the team? I have a couple. Okay, I'm looking at this presentation. I've been familiar with a lot of these Common Core standards efforts put forth by various groups, including the governor's group. There are complete curriculum for the Common Core standards that have been put out. Has Pennsylvania adopted any of those?
Pennsylvania is currently working on the math. They have not adopted the math. I know that they have committees that are meeting, but they have not completed it. So the answer is no, not yet.
Okay, and I don't know if it was just the rhetoric in the presentation or what, but a lot of what you said could be interpreted, perhaps, or misapplied, as essentially creating our courses to teach to the tests. Could you explain what the difference is?
We want to make sure that all of the concepts that students need to know are included in our courses. We are not catering our courses to the Keystones, we're not catering them to the Common Core, but we're bound by regulation and law that we need to include the Common Core standards in our curriculum guides. We are trying to be proactive in aligning everything, especially since the state is 45%, only 45% aligned with the Common Core. I mean, it's not just East Penn, it's the entire state in their math curriculum because of the PA standards. It's the Pennsylvania standards that are only 45% aligned, not just East Penn.
Well, we just, within the past few years, have just had to realign to new Pennsylvania standards.
We did, you are correct.
And now we're going through another effort to align to newer
You are
Pennsylvania
correct.
standards.
Yes, it's a very frustrating place to be when you're a curriculum director.
And especially when we're
Yes.
not receiving any extra funds from the state.
Exactly.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions? Thank you very much.
Thank you. Again, just to highlight one of the reasons why we didn't recommend new purchase of textbooks is we're trying to sort all this out and see where it's going. And again, my comments were these are the outside influences that are working on what we're going to be doing internally. Okay, one of the hot button issues going on in the country right now is No Child Left Behind. Unfortunately, a lot of us were hopeful that the Congress would change and work with Secretary of Education Duncan to come up with some new guidelines for No Child Left Behind. That has not happened, and we're very disappointed in that. I think there's been plenty of testimony. There's a lot of movements going on throughout the country for at least to the federal government to recognize that there are always going to be a certain amount of students that will not be able to reach full proficiency by the year 2014. So we'll keep you apprised. With that in mind, I want to report that we have received our preliminary AYP results. They're not the official listing, but I want to go ahead and give you some information, and we'll certainly come back and give you a full report when reports are released publicly. But there are three basic targets for AYP. The first target is attendance, graduation. I'm pleased to tell you that that the district and all schools have made that. The second target is participation rate. Again, the district made AYP and all schools made AYP. The third target is performance. And all schools, with the exception of Macungie and Emmaus High School, made AYP. Macungie Elementary School, there was an IEP subgroup for reading, and that will put Macungie into a warning category, and also Emmaus High School, the IEP subgroup for mathematics puts them into a warning group. Later on this evening, you're going to be approving an improvement plan for Lower Macungie Middle School. Want to make sure the board understands that last year Lower Macungie Elementary School was in a warning status. They basically did very fine, but they still have to go through the regulations of that improvement plan, even though they've in essence made it this year. And again, not to belabor the point, but we did talk last year a lot about Albertus, and Albertus made AYP with a special ed category, but it's exactly what we told you. They didn't simply have enough students. It was not applicable, and yet we still have to go through with year 2 of the corrective action plan and letting people know. But Albertus, their formal status will be making progress. And again, these are the kind of things that we're trying to get changed and No Child Left Behind, especially when we see the effort that the Alberta staff has to do basically because of a predicament that's not of their making. Okay, again, later on in the board meeting, you'll be asked to vote on Lower Macungie's plan. We do have Mrs. Vincent and Dr. Thorne here answering questions. about their getting results plan, so at that time, the agenda, they'll be happy to answer any reports. Some other good news is going on in district. Mrs. Blois has finished a draft of the annual report, much faster than we did last year. We're looking at making some editing changes, might add some sections, but I'm confident that that report will be due out early in September. We moved up about a month from last year, so we got a lot of nice comments. We've enhanced that a little bit, and that'll be a nice report. The other thing is we will, again, be putting certain district artifacts into school board competitions. Certainly, as you remember, last year our website was designated as a top website. In Pennsylvania, we're going to be putting that in. And I do want to give you some inside information. The first people to hear it, that the e-folios, remember when we hired the lawyer for patent, the e-folios will make their debut on September 6th. And we're really excited about that. For parents, for the public, they'll be able to get a bird's eye view of each one of our schools in a variety, through a variety of data, reports, and I think this is going to separate us again from schools anywhere, in our humble opinion. As a recognition of problems that we had last year, we've noted, we want to thank East Penn Press and other publications for putting our evening registration hours in, and the patch as well. This year we've moved to evening registration on Tuesdays and Thursdays, because last year we were certainly overwhelmed the last 2 weeks, and that seems to be working out well. And we want to thank Mrs. Campbell and Mrs. Evans for their efforts in creating those hours, and Mr. Ritter and Mr. Delancey for their support as well. Next Monday, August 15th, it's almost like school's back in session, as our in session, there's all of our sports teams, and most high school activities begin. So if you drive by our complex next week, you're going to see lots of students engaged. And again, now we're in August. August 23rd is our teacher induction day. That's coming up relatively quickly. Of course, all board members are invited to attend. And then our district day will be held on August 30th at the high school. Here's some other good news, and I'm so proud. I don't know if you recall the incredible work that our whole district did last year, but really our high school key club and cops and kids. I got a call from Bev Bradley. She's a lady who heads up. Evidently, our high school students had been busy work this summer, and believe it or not, have worked with the mayor of the city of Reading. And Reading is gearing up for a whole effort to make sure that disadvantaged kids are getting access to reading books. In addition, our kids have been working with Easton School District and the mayor in Easton, and they also took part in a wonderful program with the city of Allentown at Bucky Boyle Park, most recently, where they distributed over 2,000 books. In October, our kids will be again going to the Da Vinci Center and distributing over 2,000 books to a special Science and Reading Day at the Da Vinci Center. And Bev sends her congratulations to Mrs. Wells and Mrs. Tellis, our high school leaders, and certainly to Mark Warden, who took time out of his busy schedule to personally deliver the books to Bucky Boyle Park not too long ago. That's the kind of people that we have working in our school district. We're so proud of them, and our kids as well, getting out and taking a real leadership role in making sure disadvantaged kids get books. We're very busy with projects. We're going to ask the board to approve our concrete projects tonight. Any questions Mr. Delancey can answer? We're fast at work working on our lighting sensors throughout the district, mostly in high school. We're working on the HEVA system, and we've been working with the Booster Club to make sure that they have the proper safety requirements in the refreshment stand in the football stadium. We're excited. This Thursday, we're starting our rounds program, where we're bringing all of our administrative groups. Dr. Woodland will be here from the University of Massachusetts. We've had a planning team that has worked, and we've provided a lot of information to Dr. Woodland. Our point of emphasis will be on problem solving. So we're really excited about that. That certainly fits in with our district mission statement and our goals and belief statements. As you heard from a parent tonight, this is the first time that we've had some difficulty in approving all requests for open enrollment. There's a couple reasons for this. Certainly, we do have a strategy. I don't know if the board recalls, but 2 years ago, when we were going through redistricting, almost 2.5 years ago, we brought together every daycare provider in this district, and we laid out a plan of what we could do and what we can do in the future. And quite frankly, it's the first time we're having a problem, but I can assure you there are daycare facilities that do transport to Albertus. But here's the problem, folks. We haven't, as people have retired, we haven't filled some elementary classes, and class sizes are starting to get big, to get large. And so one of the things my staff and I are going to do when we take some input from the principals is develop some written guidelines and present them to the board so that you know that we are applying a degree of fairness, and it's not, certainly not arbitrary. But one of the things we're concerned about, we're starting to see elementary class size 27, 28, 29 in first grade. And when we're hitting those numbers, open enrollment is designed if there is space, and parents generally provide the transportation, or we can work it out, then we allow it. This is the first year we've had to say no to about 7 or 8 parents. And I'm afraid it's not going to get better in the future. We're going to try to do our best, but in some grade levels, it's just, I see no reason why we should be artificially increasing class sizes. So it's going to be a delicate situation. Unfortunately, these are some of the negatives of having less staff. Okay, last.
One other thing, Dr. Seibert, does anyone on the board have an objection to the administration doing a review of the current assignment and transportation policy in regards to elementary schools and daycares?
Well, we'll certainly provide you with information when we hand out.
I just want to make sure that nobody objects to that happening. Okay.
Well, we do have students and parents that ask to go higher or lower McCountry Middle School, and as long as we have space. But again, we're starting to see some very high class sizes in our middle schools as well, and I don't know in the future if we can grant all the requests. We're going to certainly have to communicate better with our daycare centers again and get some information out to parents. Early this year that, again, it's just not going to be possible to do all these things next year. Basically, last month I reported that our school district, we had a total of 7,886 kids enrolled in July. We're now up to 7,925. We've seen an addition of 39 students over the last month, 31 at the elementary level, 6 at the middle school level, 2 at the high school level. So we're going to be keeping an eye on that. Along with that, I do want to let the board know one of my greatest concerns has come to fruition. As we staff very tightly, very prudently, one of the things we cannot control are the kind of students that enroll here. And unfortunately, or fortunately, we've had some special ed enrollments that I'm going to have to give permission to Mrs. Picari to hire a teaching staff that's not budgeted for us to meet certain class sizes in our artistic support classes. We're getting more registrations of students coming to us from other districts in the autistic spectrum disorder area. So we simply are limited by class sizes, and we have to do what we have to do. And that's what concerns me when the state holds their special education funding level. Sounds good, certainly isn't practical. Also want to let the board know that although Lower McCountry Township was not successful in going after Safe Schools grant last year, which would help us with more students walking to Willow Lane, nonetheless we're joining forces once again with the township and seeking grant money so that we could affect some safe route strategies for Willow Lane. Again, another area that as you're walking around in the community, I want to give the board members a heads up. We're already starting to pick up some grumblings on some things that are going on with green communications. And the first one we're going to tell you about adult ed. Now, remember as part of our budget presentations, we are not sending out full-blown schedule to all box holders in advance. However, we had over 1,000 people participate last year. They've already received one email. They're going to receive another one and probably a third one. We're a little concerned because registrations are not coming in. And so this is going to be a change for our people. We're not decreasing our services in that program, just the way in which we're enrolling people. And again, trying to go green, save money on mailing out lots of things that people just throw away. So I know Mrs. Boyce has spent a lot of time. Anyone who took courses last year, they got an email, and I want to emphasize that. They're getting another one, and they'll probably get a third one. So if you hear complaints about that, we're all in this together. Also, we'll remind you that we're not shipping out the beautifully bound calendars this year. We're going to be doing that electronically as well. I know some parents won't be happy with that. Parents are calling when the calendars are coming out. Well, they're not. They're going to be coming out electronically. We're going to do a PDF file, and I'm sure as we get into this business, it'll get better next year. We're just going to routinely update parents when changes are made. And then we really need a full-court press on parent access. And again, our intent is certainly to survey and make sure we have a good handle on those parents who do not have access to a computer. Because for those parents, we will indeed provide hard copies of report cards, interim reports. But for the rest of the world, those things are going to be done electronically. And we're going to make sure that all of our principals highlight that in back-to-school nights. And the communications will be on our website. We'll ask our local newspapers to convey that. And again, it's going to be a change. And people are going to get used to it. Dr. Diagua referred to a letter about math. That certainly is going to be electronically sent to all those parents, 7th grade students. The only thing that we're doing, hard copy, because we haven't figured out what to do it, and that is bus notifications and health records. The bus cards have been delivered, they're going out, but quite frankly, we've had conversations with First Student, and yeah, they produced the cards, but we assumed the cost of sending out the postcards. And again, it's the kind of thing that we believe should be done electronically. Parents get their bus assignments electronically. Health, we haven't quite figured out how to do the health cards, but that is a project we're going to work on. And if we could find Dr. Mirabella, I'm sure we'll find a solution for that. He's working fastidiously on that. But those are the only two things that we're doing with hard copy this year. At the right time, certainly not now. Mr. Sertoball's busy. We are working with the auditors, and we want to clear up a couple things. For instance, a big issue with the audit. How do we log the jobs money? Remember, Governor, last year we had jobs money coming. They took the jobs money and stuck it in and replaced, in essence, took away state aid. But we finally found out how much that was. Up until June 30, we had no idea. It's about $750,000. And so there are some technicalities in booking that. But once we get all those numbers firmed up, we want to do a complete analysis for the board and for the public and do a comparison of what we got. State aid, all sorts of state aid last year and going forward this year. And I can tell you, I'm not going to go on record, but I think it's substantially more. We're getting substantially less than what even Mrs. Sertoball and I even anticipated. I'm just going to go out on record and say it's more than the million that we thought. Could be a lot more than that. But we're going to do our due diligence and make sure everybody gets a copy of that. The other thing we want to talk about tonight, we are going to ask the board a second reading on the fund balance policy. Mr. Clancy has prepared some literature for you. Again, the genesis of this is GASB 54. GASB is the Government Accounting Standards Board. This is a national movement. One of the things we've given you, the fund balance categories match that document identically. We're going to have to work through some perceived changes with our audit, work through the State Department, but the categories that we've had in the past are defunct, they're gone, and now each district in and the state must pass this policy. Again, the policies comprise of information from GASB 54, PDE, working with our auditor, and we also obtain some information from PFM. So those are the sources that we've used to construct this policy. And again, if you have any questions on the second reading, Mr. Glancy or Mrs. Sertibald can answer them for you. And last but not least, our budget book is now online, the finalized budget. We want to remind everybody that this is an unbelievable amount of good information there. Take time to read the documents. As our goal and everything else we try to do, keep our website up to date on issues, and things like this are very important. So Mr. Ballard, I'm sorry it took so much time, but we have a lot of good news.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Seidenberger. Are there questions for Dr. Seidenberger? Mr. Earnshaw.
Thank you, Mr. Ballard. I just wanted to emphasize the point that if we do have to hire special education teachers, it's because the state sets standards of this teacher-to-student ratio. And so if we have more students, we are forced under state law to hire additional teachers. It's not like we just say, we think it's the appropriate ratio, but it's a mandate.
That's correct.
Correct? All right.
For each handicapping condition, there's a range of students to teachers.
Okay. And so we it's not like we can say, well, we think we can get by with fewer teachers.
Or even worse, change the title of the classes.
Right. All right, the other thing is for the report cards, I would request that as the report cards become available in the online system, that a notification email gets sent out.
One of the things we're going to be working with our principals, and we're going to have to really communicate that with parents. You know how that works. I didn't know about it. So we're going to have to eliminate the amount of I didn't know about it. And again, I'm going to ask every principal to really hammer this point home almost from day one. And anytime they have an opportunity to send a communication home with parents to remind them about parent access. Mr. Moe and his staff will certainly set up hours. We've had a tremendous turnout in the last 2 years of parents coming out, but unless you're enrolled, you're not going to get the information. So we know we have a work cut out, but this is a major transition in changing our behavior. And I think we're going to be able to communicate directly with parents at the same time, save some valuable funds.
Yeah, and I can only say from my own experience, my children have rued the day that the Home Access Center was rolled out. Because we've had a number of challenging conversations. Why is it that you have a 0 in this homework assignment? Well, I was late getting it done. Well, have you turned it in yet? No. Why not? Well, because it was late. Will you get credit if you turn it in? Well, half credit. Then turn it in tomorrow. Right? So we've had a number of conversations like that in my home, and some very sheepish teens and preteens have left my company from the computer screen with their metaphorical tails between their legs. But it's been a great resource for me as a parent in monitoring my children and making sure that they're staying on top of what they need.
And one of the things I'm certainly going to do privately is call Mrs. Kwalchuk, used to be on the board. This was a passion of hers, and I'm going to tell her, Susan, we're just about there. I mean, everything you wanted, I think you asked me to accomplish, it's basically done, and we're very happy to make that call. I think she'd be very happy with where we're going in this direction.
And just from my own experience, I got a number of emails from Mr. Piperato at the high school over the course of the year. It was very helpful to get those alerts. They were very informative, they were short, to the point, gave me the information I needed to know. I think our staff, not only the administrators in sending those alerts, but the teachers in putting the detailed assignment information into the system so that it's available in the Home Access Center, they've all done a wonderful job. And I hope that they understand that I, at least as a parent, appreciate all their efforts. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Fuller?
I just wanted to note my joy in seeing the hiring of art and music teachers. You know, in a day and age when those positions are being removed, we are continuing to support the arts.
Are there other questions for Dr. Seidenberger on his report? I had a couple of comments that I wanted to make, Dr. Seidenberger. About the adult education, I think we should consider putting some posters in the libraries of our various municipalities that have libraries, because they would also have the electronic access and could show some people who don't have electronic access how to get on there. And so that would also help, because there are a number of members of our community who are not in the information age as thoroughly as some of our students are. So you consider that, and also the budget book. We want to make sure that in the past we put a copy, a hard copy in the libraries, so we should put one in, at least Mayes, Lower Country Township. I don't know that any other libraries per se in the district.
I'm almost positive, I'll double check, I'm almost positive Mrs. Boyce has made those contacts, and she's gone out to libraries, and yes, here she is.
They are. They're in libraries.
Don't hide, come on up here.
I mean,
When you say what that is in libraries.
We did print out about a couple hundred brochures, and they're in the local adult education brochures. They're in the local libraries, senior living facilities, community centers. We put a doctor's, dentist's office all around the community.
Okay, so we just didn't mail any out.
Right, exactly.
But we did distribute some to those obvious spots.
Yes.
Okay, good, thank you.
Thanks.
And the budget book in the library, we need to check to make sure that we have those copies there. I wanted to comment that one solution has been found by another district in regard to
You
calendar.
want to say something, Mrs. Sirlo?
Yes, the budget book and the state form that we have to submit for the budget are in both Lower Macungie Library and in the school library.
Okay,
They
good.
always are.
Good. Well, I want to make sure that we hadn't gone to all electronic all the time. All right, and one of our local districts, who we won't name, but we're often at rivals with, has solved their calendar problem.
I understand that.
By getting a commercial calendar done, by selling advertisements. And if someone is interested in sponsoring such a thing, I would urge them to come forward to the district, where we'll be interested to listen to their proposal. Because there are people who do like the printed calendars, and we could use that and not have it at taxpayer expense in that way.
Certainly an option, and I think, if you remember, Mr. Bauer, last year I mused about looking at other types of alternate funding sources, and I think this year, stole some of my thunder, at some point I'm going to come back and ask the board to re-examine, we want to look at educational foundation, because that other district is moving that direction. Because I tell you, now's the time to hit with some of the tax credits coming down the line. And also, we're getting, at least Mr. Ramel and Mr. Lansing and I have heard from a couple companies that are interested in some pay-as-you-go, some type of revenue source for advertising. And again, well, I want you to know we're looking at those things quietly behind the scenes, and if we feel that there's something that you might be interested in, we'll bring it to you. But again, I'll remind you, we might have to change our policies on that, because we have some policies on right now in advertising and alternate funding sources.
Yes, okay. And the last comment I want to make is, with the change in GASB categories, I'm just waiting to see how the state screws it up on their website this time, because they've not been able to get the thing even to match their own forms that we have to submit. So I warn everybody, don't expect the numbers on the state website to get any better anytime soon, because we now have 5 different categories, and it's not clear whether they're going to list all the categories, and trying to get the numbers to add up at the state from between their forms, their website, and their directives has been a nightmare for the school district. All right, no other comments. We'll move on to item 3, personnel with the addendum. Can I have a motion, please?
Second.
Is there any discussion of item 3? None appearing. Ms. Birdsall, will you call the roll, please?
Ms. Hyde. Mr. Stoltz.
Aye.
Mr. Richmond.
Aye.
Mr. Politano.
Aye.
Ms. Fuller. Mr. Earnshaw.
Aye.
Mr. Bauer.
Aye.
And
There
Seven
are
ayes?
7 this year.
All right, that item passed. Can I have a motion on item number 4?
So moved.
Second.
Is there any discussion? Ms. Birdsall, will you call the roll, please?
Mr. Armstrong. Ms. Fuller. Mr. Polacano.
Aye.
Mr. Richmond. Mr. Stoltz.
Aye.
Ms. Hall. Mr. Ballard.
Aye.
7 ayes.
All right, we have item number 5, the Lower McCountry Middle School Improvement Plan, which Dr. Seidenberger referenced previously. Can I have a motion, please?
So moved. Second.
All right, Dr. Seidenberger, do you want to have any further comments?
No, again, we're very pleased with the progress we've made. As part of No Child Left Behind, schools get a warning. They really got to do a comprehensive plan that encompasses not only that particular subgroup, but other subgroups in the school as well. And I would certainly want to thank Mrs. Vincent and her staff and central office people who worked with this plan. And again, even though Albertus is not here tonight, but I think, again, this is an opportunity for the public and the board to see our dedicated staff in action, responding with, I think, appropriate education strategies and solutions for looking at this particular issue.
Is there any comment? I would just like to note that today, Secretary of Education Arnie Duncan announced that there would be waivers on a large number of these particular items that have not been resolved by Congress. We'll have to see what the regulations actually say. But as I've told you before, I have gone to Charlie Dent many times, and he's indicated he agrees that the current law, which does not reconcile the special education law, IDEA, and the No Child Left Behind law for the progress of students with IEPs is a major point that needs to be fixed in the law so that we can remove the stigma from students who are doing their best but are failing according to some arbitrary standard that was never meant for them. So we'll be talking about that some more, I think, when I go back and try to lobby him again. Mr. Stoltz, do you have something?
Yes, I read in the last day or two that President Obama is considering modifying the No Child Left Behind Act via executive order. Would this at all alleviate some of our concerns?
We think so. Every organization, school boards, AASA, we've been responding and they've been gathering tons of data. My understanding is that there are 5 states that now have received approval for waivers. 1 state did not. We're trying to figure out why. Maybe it was for 3-year terms instead of 5 years. But I think there's so much pressure on this particular issue, something's going to happen.
Well, it could be the start of this, but it's not clear exactly how it's going to play out. Congress will undoubtedly weigh in. There may be court challenges, you never know, but that's at least some start toward things. Are there any other comments on this item? None appearing. Ms. Birdsall, will you please call the roll?
Mr. Polacano.
Aye.
Mr. Richmond.
Aye.
Mr. Earnshaw.
Aye.
Ms. Fuller. Mr. Stoltz.
Aye.
Ms. Hyde. Mr. Ballard.
Aye.
7 ayes.
All right, the next item on the agenda is the second reading of Board Policy 620, fund balance. Are there any comments or questions for the administration on this policy? Then it will be appearing probably at the next meeting for final approval by the board. Please, if you have any questions after reviewing the policy again, please contact Mr. Glancy or Ms. Sertable or Dr. Seidenberger with your comments as soon as possible so that anything can be resolved prior to the final reading of the policy. Okay?
Mr. Ballard?
Yes.
If I could suggest, I've usually found it most effective to route my questions to Ms. Birdsall because she can get it to the right people a lot faster than I can. And, she certainly knows who's on vacation and who's not. So I would certainly recommend that we route through.
Okay.
If that's okay with Ms. Birdsall. Thank you.
All right, item 7.1, business operations. The first item is the bid opening reports for concrete, diesel, fuel oil, system integration of the facility management control system. Is there any objection to moving items 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6 together?
I'll move those.
Second.
All right, is there any discussion of any of these items? None appearing. Ms. Birdsall, will you call the roll, please?
Ms. Fuller. Aye. Mr. Earnshaw.
Aye.
Mr. Napolitano.
Aye.
Mr. Richmond.
Aye.
Mr. Stoltz.
Aye.
Ms. Hyde. Mr. Ballard.
Aye.
7 ayes.
All right, for new business, one of our neighbors who's been very cooperative over the years with the school district, the Lutheran Church of the Holy Spirit, is celebrating a milestone of the 50th year anniversary of their presence in the community. And I would like to ask the board's permission on behalf of the board to write a letter of commendation for their 50th anniversary and their service to the community. Is there any objection? Okay, I will do that on behalf of the board. Is there any other new business to come before the board, Mr. Richline?
I don't know if it's new business or under announcement. I had, there's a certain amount of information that I think has been pretty much ignored by everybody but people in the public school arena. And I would just like to take a couple minutes to pass on the information, if that's...
Go ahead, and we'll see if it's appropriate.
Okay. A member of the school board member in the Anvil-Cleona School District recently decided to try to get a handle on the performance of the cyber charter schools in the state. And through public documents, he was able to take the 11 cyber charter schools in Pennsylvania and compare them to state averages. He didn't compare them to any particular districts. He didn't cherry pick only the best. He just strictly took the state averages, and his findings are interesting, and he has them on a website. But these are from the 2009-2010 scores, and there are 11 cyber charter schools chartered in Pennsylvania, which he looked at. And 7 of the 11 scored below the state average at every grade level and in every subject area: math, reading, and science. In fact, all 11, not one at any grade level, scored above the state average in math. All 11. Of the 4 cyber charter schools that had some grades score above the state average, the results still weren't particularly impressive, and some of them had only 1 or 2 grades, 1 or 2 subjects where they scored higher than the state level. And considering the push for more and more charter schools and more bad-mouthing of the public schools, and then cyber charters as well as charters are the answer to everything, it's quite revealing how poorly the cyber charter schools have done in the state testing. And in conjunction with that, there is a certain, you might say, scandal in the state with the possible cheating on the PSSAs. And while there has been some coverage of that with some local districts and individual schools, too little has been really paid attention to a certain of these charter schools. Of the 89 schools that have been flagged by the state for further investigation, it was done due to improbably high numbers of erasures from incorrect answers to correct answers, as well as questionable gains on reading and math tests. And the state's largest charter school, the Chester Community Charter School, and their 2,700 students, they were among those who were flagged for suspicious erasure results. It was also flagged for questionable test scores. In 2009, 65.4% of 8th graders were proficient in math compared with only 22 the year before. What's more interesting about the Chester Community Charter School, it's operated by the single largest contributor to Governor Corbett's election campaign. And I don't know how to pronounce his name. I believe it's Gurigian.
Gurigian.
Thank you. And what was interesting is shortly before the cheating accusations were made, Mr. Corbett visited his charter school, praising it as a model that needs to be reported to all people of Pennsylvania. And what is further interesting is that this individual, who is a strong proponent of charter expansion and school choice, played a significant role on Corbett's transition team, including being a member of the Education Committee. They have a poor, the school has not particularly impressive history, but since 2003 they've made adequate yearly progress only 3 times. And when this was covered by the Inquirer, they received a message to cease and desist all defamatory communications. Also, they have been engaged in talks with officials in the Pottstown School District to take over management of the Pottstown elementary schools. A secret closed-door meeting on February 23rd was held with the management company, Pottstown district leadership, and among others, Senator Jeffrey Piccola, chair of the Senate Education Committee. And I'm reading this from an article. About a month after the February 23rd meeting, and days before Gurigian made public his interest in running Pottstown's elementary schools, Piccola introduced a charter school reform bill that would, among other things, make it easier for charter operators to take over public schools and districts. How convenient. And what is also interesting about Chester Community Charter School, they refuse to divulge financial information. Now, this is a charter school, a public charter school. But they get around this by turning the operation over to a private management company, which they claim does not have to abide by the Sunshine Laws. They have tied up requests to see their financial records in court. It has been a ruling of the Office of Open Records that gives the newspaper the right to see these records. They're fighting it in court, threatening lawsuits. If the East Penn School District tried to do this, people would be screaming about the Sunshine Law. This is the people who are taking advantage of this law. And we keep hearing about how wonderful charter schools are, and here we have one run by one of the most politically influential people in the state making a buck. the thinking is that they pay their teachers so little, and all the money is funded to the owners and administrators. There is such a turnover of teachers that they now charge them $2,000 if they leave before the end of the school year. As I said, this is a story that is being ignored by just about everybody. And the state keeps pushing for charter schools, making it easier for money to be siphoned away from the public schools, who bear the brunt of most of the education in this state, to enrich some political cronies. And I just thought that that should be put out in the public because, as you know, I'm not a big fan of charter schools, and this is one of the reasons that there are people out there who see this just as a way to make money. And the welfare of the students be damned. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Richwine. I would make one comment that if you listened very carefully to Secretary Tomales' testimony recently to the committee regarding charter schools and vouchers, he made the comment that the governor was in favor of testing, but it wasn't the PSSA tests. It was selected tests, so that it would be impossible to make a comparison any further between the additional voucher schools or charter schools and the public schools, which would still be forced to take the same test. Are there any other new items to come before I'll entertain a motion to adjourn? Oh, announcement. Yeah, we had a clear session before this meeting to discuss real estate and confidential matters. And the next board meeting will be on Monday, August 22nd. Motion to adjourn, please. So moved. All in favor? Aye. We are adjourned. Thank you.